Hello, my friends. I'm glad you're back because we are going to talk today about the pros and cons of an agent representation. If you need an agent or if you don't, right? What are the pros and cons? How do you make this decision? And we're not talking specific agents here, like what's the pro of that one versus the pro of that one, or, pros and cons list for each one to compare one against one, or five against five, or whatever it is. We will talk about criteria to use to select an agent that fits for you in another video. In this one, I want to give you an idea of how to evaluate whether or not an agent is a good fit for you, meaning getting representation. So, if you are thinking about traditionally publishing, you most likely need one, but I want you to think about it in a sense that, this could be a part of the equation of whether or not you want to traditionally publish. Do you want to work with an agent? For example, let's talk about some pros. An agent is going to be kind of your industry insider perspective. They are the pros, they know the industry, they know what's being published, they have specific things that they're looking for typically because they know they're selling. So an agent has their finger on the pulse, okay? They understand what's going to sell, what's not going to sell. They will guide you through this process. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to know everything there is to know about the publishing industry just to get your book sold, okay? They have access to some publishers that you may not. They have the ability to walk up and I like to just, in my head, it's like they walk up to the door of a publishing house when you don't have access. You don't have the key, the key fob. But really what they have is connections. They can pick up the phone, they can shoot an email to someone who worked with whoever, and they have this thing for years and years. They've had this connection, and they know that this editor wants this type of material. They know this publisher is looking at these types of books. You don't know those things, right? You don't unless you're Googling. But even really what you are up against is that insider outsider perspective. You're on the outside, they're on the inside. You are trying to break your way in, not, illegally here. You're trying to break your way into the market and get into this market as a viable product producer, okay? You're producing a viable product for consumption. So you are not part of the industry. You are trying to come into it as a book writer. These agents, editors, publishers, all of the professionals that work in the industry, they know each other. They make those connections. You're utilizing someone who has an in, okay? That's what an agent will do. So, but not only that, on top of all of that industry specific stuff, if you get an agent to sign you, you're essentially getting someone who's vouched for your book, who's validated your book, who's kind of said, like, you know what, this one really does have a shot. So getting an agent kind of feels good, I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those, like, a little bit of an ego stroke here, but it really is validation. You get an industry expert who says, yep, I will put my time, energy, effort, and sometimes upfront costs into getting your book sold. And guess what? I won't even get paid for it until it is sold. They essentially work for free because they've evaluated your book and judged it marketable. That feels good, okay? So if you are looking for a traditional deal, an agent comes with a lot of pros. I just listed a few. But let's go ahead and talk about the cons. I think the most obvious one is that they get a cut of your profits. So if you get a book deal advance, they're going to get a cut of that. If there's something else written into the contract, the agent is going to get, typically it's about 15%, I believe, is the industry standard right now. There are reasons why it will go a little higher than that. For example, if you are internationally going to be dealing with some international deals, they may have to bring in someone who's able to handle the international aspect. But for domestic contracts, you're going to look at about 15%, sometimes lower. If they feel rock bottom, ask yourself why. But eventually, at some level, you're going to have to pay an agent for their participation in the deal. But again, they're not getting paid hourly or by some level of effort. They're getting paid a percentage. So their main mission is to get your book sold as quickly as possible to the best fit for the most amount of money. And then, of course, another downfall is that, an agent may or may not have some costs involved that's fairly minor. I think back in the day when things were printed and FedExed and all of that, faxed, there probably was a few more costs, but now it may not be. It may be fairly minimal, but the agent may be the only way for you to access some publishers that you're interested in working with. So that can feel like a con. You can kind of feel trapped a little bit, like you really have no other choice but to hire an agent. So I want you to just take this into consideration. If you're looking to try to get a book deal and you are unagented, your options will be fairly minimal because most publishers do require agents to submit to them directly in order to consider your manuscript. Not all of them, but most of them. So just keep that in mind, that there are some pros and cons. If you're really leaning against working with an agent and you really don't want to pay anyone a percentage of your profits, and you really don't want to have to deal with someone else, you feel very comfortable in the market, you've done your research, whatever it is, perhaps you are better suited for the self-publishing or indie publishing areas of the book publishing world. There are many, many independent publishers that can provide you with some of the things that a more traditional publisher can provide you with. For example, distribution, bookstore placement. There are, I suppose, some clout that goes with having your book traditionally published. Some independent publishers may have a very, very good reputation and be very well known. So that might be okay for you to say, like, I don't need one of the big four or big five or whatever they are now. I think it's four. I always flip-flop that. And so that might be something that works for you. And getting an agent just doesn't feel right because those cons are outweighing the pros in a lot of ways. So do just take a minute to do a quick analysis. What are the pros and cons? Understand that, of course, this is not within the context of a good agent and a bad agent. We will talk about that. In fact, come back for my next video and we do talk about what makes a good agent. That's something that's fairly subjective, but there are some criteria you should evaluate when looking for an agent that is good for you, a good fit. But this particular discussion is more in the way of helping you understand what you're getting with an agent and whether or not this is the right move for you. If you want to work with a specific publisher and they require it, you may be kind of a stuck goose on that one. So that is the way of the world, my friend, the way of the book world. But if an agent is in your future, if working with an agent is in your future, continue coming back. We're going to talk about how to select the best agent and how to move forward with that. So I will be back to discuss more, and I hope to see you there.